The palace thought a single announcement would calm the storm. Instead, it exposed a crack running straight through the heart of the monarchy. Princess Anne wasn't just being asked to help while Queen Camilla stepped aside. She was taking over every one of Camilla's official state duties immediately. And the speed of that decision sent one unmistakable message racing through Buckingham Palace. Something had happened, behind closed doors, that could no longer be hidden. This wasn't a diary adjustment. It wasn't a harmless scheduling change. It was a transfer of power, personally approved by King Charles himself. And the deeper the timeline is examined, the more impossible it becomes to believe that this was ever about logistics. Every conversation, every document, every silence, and every carefully controlled expression suddenly looks like another clue in a much bigger royal crisis. The moment King Charles finished reading the final announcement, witnesses say he placed the document flat on his desk without speaking a single word. That silence spoke louder than any official statement ever could. Official state duties are the very foundation of royal authority, including ceremonial appearances, patronage visits, diplomatic receptions, and engagements carried out alongside the sovereign. By signing away those responsibilities, Charles wasn't simply asking his sister to cover a few engagements while his wife rested. He was removing the public role that had become inseparable from Camilla's identity as queen consort. The king's signature didn't just change a calendar, it changed the balance of power inside the royal family. Camilla didn't discover the decision through newspapers or television reports. A senior courtier informed her moments before the palace released its statement. She didn't shout, she didn't argue. She asked only one devastating question. Had Charles personally approved every single word? When the answer came back yes, something changed instantly. She wasn't mourning the loss of public appearances. She was realizing that the man she had stood beside for decades, fighting criticism and public resistance to earn acceptance, had personally authorized her removal from the very responsibilities that proved she finally belonged at the center of the monarchy. The emotional damage wasn't caused by strangers. It came from the one person whose support mattered most. While Camilla was still processing that revelation, Princess Anne was quietly summoned without ceremony. A sealed briefing folder was placed into her hands. Inside wasn't a temporary schedule or a handful of substitute engagements. Reception after reception, diplomatic meetings, patronage visits, memorial services, and official ceremonies now carried Anne's name. The palace described the move as emergency restructuring, designed to prevent disruption to royal service. But the paperwork exposed something entirely different. Preparations had already been completed before Camilla was officially informed. This wasn't an emergency response. It was a carefully organized transition that had been quietly built behind the scenes. Then Anne reached one sentence that revealed the real power behind the decision. The transfer would remain in force until the sovereign determined otherwise. Charles alone would decide if Camilla ever returned. The first engagement waiting inside that folder made the situation even more explosive. It was the major state reception Camilla had personally prepared for months. She had written the welcome speech herself. She had planned every detail, believing it would strengthen her public position beside Charles after years of criticism. Now Anne would walk into that reception carrying another woman's work, while cameras around the world searched every expression for signs of victory or humiliation. Anne didn't celebrate. She understood exactly what had landed in her hands. Every successful appearance risked becoming proof that Camilla could be replaced. The palace publicly described the transfer as administrative. But inside royal circles, everyone understood something far more dangerous was unfolding. This wasn't simply about duties. It was about trust. Princess Anne had spent decades building a reputation for relentless discipline, punctuality, and unquestioned service. Whenever instability threatened the institution, Anne was the person palace officials depended upon. Camilla represented something completely different. She symbolized Charles's long and controversial journey toward acceptance. One woman embodied reliability. The other embodied survival. Now those two identities had collided, and only one of them appeared to be gaining ground. Anne studied the revised calendar alone, fully aware that every appearance would carry political consequences. She wasn't stepping into a vacant role. She was occupying the public space that had defined Camilla's place beside the king. Every diplomatic handshake, every hospital visit, every memorial appearance, every reception, every photograph would quietly ask the same uncomfortable question. If Anne could perform these responsibilities without disruption, what exactly did the palace still need Camilla for? The assignment wasn't just responsibility. It was a public comparison neither woman had asked for, but neither could escape. Meanwhile, Camilla returned to the reception folder she had spent weeks preparing. Slowly, she removed the handwritten speech she intended to deliver beside Charles. Every sentence represented years of struggle. Every paragraph reflected the acceptance she believed she had finally earned. Losing official duties meant far more than losing a schedule. It meant watching the clearest symbol of her place within the monarchy pass directly into someone else's hands. The speech remained, but the voice delivering it would no longer be hers. Anne soon discovered another revelation hidden inside her new responsibilities. A senior aide informed her that several household staff members had already been reassigned to support her expanded workload. Private secretaries, planners, advisors, scheduling officers, and administrative staff weren't simply helping temporarily. They were moving permanently into Anne's operation. That decision exposed the true scale of the restructuring. The palace wasn't preparing for a short-term substitution. It was constructing an entirely new operational center around Princess Anne before the public even knew anything had changed. Camilla experienced the next blow only moments later. Access to selected diplomatic briefing papers had been suspended. Those confidential documents prepared senior royals for meetings with foreign representatives and international delegations. When she looked toward the place where the files normally rested, she found nothing. The message couldn't have been clearer. Charles hadn't merely removed public appearances. He had separated her from the confidential machinery that keeps the monarchy functioning behind closed doors. Public visibility had disappeared. Private influence was beginning to disappear as well. Then another message reached Anne. Charles wanted a private meeting. At almost the same moment, the king separately requested Camilla's presence. But instead of agreeing, Camilla refused outright. She would not enter the room until Charles explained exactly what incident had convinced him to approve such a drastic transfer. That refusal forced everyone inside Buckingham Palace to confront a question they had carefully avoided. Because this crisis hadn't begun with the announcement at all. It had begun weeks earlier during a diplomatic ceremony where one altered seating card, one private objection, and one decision made without the king's approval quietly triggered the chain of events that would ultimately shake the entire monarchy. Anne couldn't ignore what had happened 3 weeks earlier, because that was where every thread of this crisis led back. Minutes before the Commonwealth Service of Renewal was due to begin, she noticed something so small that almost no one else would have questioned it. Her seating card had been altered. Instead of standing beside King Charles during the central presentation, she had been moved behind 2 less senior representatives. To ordinary guests, it looked like a harmless adjustment. Inside royal protocol, however, the order of precedence determines rank, influence, and the message every diplomat carries home. Someone hadn't simply moved a chair. Someone had quietly rewritten the hierarchy of the royal family. Anne folded the revised card and approached Camilla privately, making sure no cameras or foreign delegates witnessed the exchange. Her voice remained calm as she asked whether the change had been intentional. Camilla never denied it. Instead, she replied that the monarchy should reflect the king's household first. Those few carefully chosen words immediately transformed a protocol issue into something deeply personal. Anne suddenly understood that this wasn't about ceremony. It was about limiting her visibility beside Charles, because her closeness to the king had started to challenge someone else's position. Days later, Charles finally summoned both women into the same private sitting room. There were no photographers waiting outside, no advisors speaking on anyone's behalf, no ceremonial smiles hiding deeper emotions. The revised ceremony plan, the original approval, and the documented email were placed directly on the table between them. Every excuse suddenly disappeared. The discussion was no longer about seating arrangements or protocol. It had become a confrontation over power, loyalty, and whether personal insecurity had been allowed to interfere with the machinery of the crown. Camilla broke the silence first. She insisted every decision had been made to protect the dignity of the sovereign's household. According to her argument, those closest to Charles should naturally occupy the center of royal events. She accused Anne of treating routine adjustments like personal insults, and argued that the palace could not revolve around one individual's pride. Her tone remained measured. But beneath every carefully controlled sentence lay months, perhaps years of frustration that had finally reached the surface. Anne refused to match that emotion. Instead, she calmly redirected the discussion toward the only issue she believed truly mattered. This was never about where she stood. It was about the king's authority being used without his permission. Charles had approved one arrangement, yet another had allegedly been implemented in his name. Looking directly at Camilla, Anne quietly stated that private insecurity could never be allowed to outweigh public duty. The room fell silent because no one could deny that the argument had shifted beyond personal feelings. It had become a question of whether the institution itself had been compromised. Charles then asked the one question neither woman could avoid. Had Camilla known the revised order had already been rejected before the ceremony began? After several agonizing seconds of silence, she admitted she had seen the warning, but believed Charles would ultimately support the change once the event concluded. That confession struck harder than any denial could have. It suggested the instruction hadn't been misunderstood. It had allegedly been disregarded in the belief that the king would later accept a decision already carried out. Charles slowly removed his glasses and placed them beside the documents. Then he revealed something neither woman had expected. An emergency transfer of duties had already been drafted before this meeting even began, proving the decision had moved far beyond debate. As Camilla stared at her husband in disbelief, one terrifying realization settled over the room. The confrontation they thought would determine the future had merely confirmed a decision that had already been made, and somewhere else inside Buckingham Palace, preparations for Princess Anne's new role were already moving forward, without waiting for anyone's permission.